Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Hopefully, everyone had a fantastic Labor Day holiday here in the United States. This is the first week of trading for September, the new month, and also the first day of the month as well. So what you're going to see here is higher value relationship that is developed here overall. Higher value being the pivot range here being higher than the last month, and this month the pivot range higher than the last month as well. And that signifies obviously a very clean uptrending market. Now, typically speaking, we could see a very brief period of counter trend rotation back into the range to begin the week, followed by bulls coming in to defend and return things to new highs. So basically, right now we could see a bit more selling pressure. It probably will be fleeting, maybe a 1 to 3 days pullback, and then from there we could begin to see some sort of rejection, say 2860s, that leads to a retest of highs and perhaps a push through those highs. So that's a path that we could take for the month, and it all kind of depends on, can price continue to hold above 2850, the midpoint of last month's range here. Because any failure to hold above that point opens up a return back to 2790, our familiar area of support. So right now, a little bit of weakness that could set in. Again, below 2890 is where that really opens up a little bit more to the downside, where we could pull back between 2850 and 2860. All right, now let's take a look at the NQ. The NQ here has been on highs. Again, the channel has been very, very clean and clear to the upside. Remember when we were down here forming this little flag here, I mentioned we're at the bottom of the channel, and typically speaking, you see a squeeze that comes out of this thing up to new highs, and that's what we got. And now that we're at cycle highs, sitting here at 4-day highs, that could open up an opportunity for a counter trend move. Again, back toward the bottom of the pivot range. That's the midpoint in an uptrending market, and that could provide another opportunity to push higher yet again in September. So again, we could see a little modest weakness here. This would be counter trend to the current overall trending market, which means you have to be a little more careful here, but there is a potential pullback that could come. Right now, anytime you take the previous high and previous close offered right away to begin a month, the only level really left to test is the midpoint, because other than that, there's the low. So if you're going to take these two offers straight away, then usually you point to this level. That's about 74.45 or so, and that's been a key level for us as well, 74.40, 74.50, and that's the zone here that if we pull back to, could be a buying opportunity to return price back toward highs. Failure to open up any or failure to bounce and push higher off that zone could open up a return back towards 72.14.5. So that's kind of the path to take here early on this month. We'll talk more about this later on this afternoon in the monthly market outlook at 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Please join me. It'll be the PivotBoss link, which I'll tweet out. It's the join me /PivotBoss. All right, so taking a look now at crude oil. Crude oil is already up about 2% on the day. It's pulling back a little bit from the highs. Stop run day already in full effect here, where prices push through 2-day highs. Midpoint is at or beyond those highs, and we see things continuing much higher. Inside day on Friday, failed new low to begin trading this month, and now we're taking price bid and continuing higher. That's a pretty solid move. Price really has been vertical here ever since this narrow range down here developed, and price pushed back above the 66.37. We mentioned at the time, pushing back above that zone opens up a move as high as recent highs up here, 70, 70, 50. But really beyond that, it's open air until you get back towards 75. So can price really find acceptance above 71s? If not, perhaps this could be a short-term high as this thing maybe moves back towards 66.30. I wouldn't be looking to sell it just yet, but again, if there's any failure to hold above the previous month's high here, and that could be over the next day or 2 or 3, it doesn't have to be just today, that would be significant. But right now, everything's pointing up, and bulls are going to look to defend the 70.80 intraday LVN. All right, taking a look now at gold futures here. We mentioned last week that gold was on the cusp of seeing a stop run through 1200. We've had this nice pullback here, bulls defending, but again, if we can't start getting price to push higher toward that 1240, then it just becomes another lower high to sell ahead of another round of weakness. And bulls have been coming in to defend 1200 here from above, failed new high on Friday, and now we're seeing price push down, currently at 1199. That could open up much more selling pressure ahead. Now 1190 has been the key level here, so that's kind of the last area of support here before this thing really gets going to the downside. But overall, gold is really trying to hold this 1200 zone. It's been a major area on a long-term basis, and it could be a little bit more of a fight in this area before we really see anything. I mean, we could continue to build out here before we see a return to value, because it takes time to build that energy. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, we'll see if price can continue to hold 1190, 1200, generally speaking. Lastly, taking a look at Bitcoin, up perhaps the most of these futures today, up about 5%. Big breakaway gap to the upside. 67 held on the pullback, and again, seeing the continuation higher. I mentioned before, as long as 6700 remains intact after this move, we could see a continuation toward 8K and as high as 8200. That puts you into the value area here, the VPOC of 8176. Still on that path right now, 73.90 last price, already seeing a high of 73.95 today. We could see much more strength overall this month, and again, as long as 6700 remains intact. So right now, very strong start to the month, and again, 8,000 to 8,200 could be a very solid target to take profits on this recent move. All right, that is it for now. Thank you for hanging out this morning for the pre-market video. Again, please join me later on this afternoon, 3:30 p.m. Central. It is join.me/PivotBoss, and that will be the PivotBoss monthly outlook later on this afternoon. All right, that is it for now. Let's see how this plays out heading into the new week and the new month of trading. Good luck and trade well.